The Hunt. What is it?
Confirming the criminal
The Hunt for Canada Wanted Man.
organization thereafter and the identity of the man running it. The Blood Family Mafia, police say, is led by Dave Turmel, a 27-year-old from the Quebec City region, right now on the run.
Les pieds dans l'eau, au bord de la mer. Demain je drop, il faut une maison pour la mer. Faut battre le fer quand il est chaud.
Dis-moi que les motards, c'est des salopes.
Ah non, c'est des salopes.
Dis-moi que tu vas travailler pour BFM.
Ouais, y'a BFM, on travaille pour BFM.
Je te jure, bro.
Plus chaud que le feu en enfer. Campé comme Donald Trump pour faire la guerre.
Quebec City might look calm and historic on the outside, but behind the scenes, a whole different story was playing out, one that puts the city in the national spotlight.
A 28-year-old man from Saguenay, 200 kilometers north of Quebec City, was found right here in Montreal's Rosemont overnight with his finger and toe cut off after a possible kidnapping linked to drug trafficking. This comes amid increased violence related to street gangs in the province, particularly the Quebec City and Montreal regions.
At the center of it is Dave Turmel, better known on the streets as Pick. Turmel, now 28 years old, is the alleged leader of the Blood Family Mafia, a street gang born in Quebec City that grew into one of the province's most feared crews. For more than a year, he was on the run, topping Canada's most wanted list, with police calling him the man at the center of a violent turf war against the Hells Angels. The violence tied to Turmel's gang reached such extremes that even seasoned Hells Angels members admitted to police they feared for the safety of their own families. According to investigators, as many as 30 high-ranking bikers were told they were on a hit list. Behind the scenes, there were even rumors that the Hells Angels, usually the ones to be feared, went to the police themselves, saying, "You've got to do something about these people, they're crazy." After a failed attempt in February to kidnap Hells Angels members and their families, the heat on Turmel only intensified. Word spread that a contract had been placed on his life. What started as a $500,000 bounty was now doubled to $1 million. On top of that, the Canadian government announced a $250,000 reward for information leading to his capture. With those price tags, Turmel wasn't just a target in Quebec's underworld, he'd become one of the most wanted men in the country. In this documentary, we'll trace the rise of Dave Turmel, the man who went from street-level hustler to the Hells Angels' most feared rival, and how Canadian law enforcement ultimately hunted him down as the nation's most wanted fugitive. Before we continue this story, I want to take a minute for a paid partnership with BetterHelp. Lately, I've been thinking about how easy it is to get stuck in the same
ads. Come on, man. We can't
view.
do ads. No,
Is just taking that first step, and BetterHelp can help you do that. Turmel's early life remains mostly private, but what we do know paints a picture of someone drawn into violence from a young age. He was born on May 3, 1996, in Lévis, just across the river from Quebec City. By the time he turned 18, his life was already tied to crime. On his birthday in May 2014, a fight outside a bar ended with two men stabbed, one in the ribs and hip, the other in the lung. Turmel was charged with attempted murder and sent to prison for 3 years. Inside, guards caught him with a homemade shank, an improvised ice pick, and that's where the nickname Ice Pick stuck. After his release, the cycle continued. In 2018, he was arrested for threatening a man with a baseball bat. 1 year later, he was caught with a loaded .45 caliber pistol and sent back to prison. Now 27, Turmel has already spent roughly 4 years of his adult life behind bars, and each time he came out, his reputation on the street only seemed to grow stronger. This is where the Blood Family Mafia comes into play. The Blood Family Mafia, otherwise known as BFM, wasn't just some random street gang that popped up overnight. They go back to the mid-2000s, starting in the neighborhoods of the St. Lawrence River Valley, where a mix of young hustlers, many of them teenagers at the time, came together around drugs and quick money. At first, they weren't seen as a major threat. Quebec's underworld was still dominated by the Hells Angels, with bikers controlling most of the cocaine and meth pipelines, and the Italian mob pulling strings behind the scenes. For a while, BFM operated in the shadows, selling locally and moving quietly. But as the gang grew, their reputation began to change. They weren't just another crew paying tribute to the bikers. They wanted their own piece of the drug trade and, eventually, full control of it in parts of eastern Quebec. By 2023, with the backing of Montreal's Sicilian Risotto mob, Dave Turmel consolidated smaller street gangs under the BFM name and openly pushed back against the Hells Angels' 10% drug tax. The Hells Angels didn't take kindly to Turmel's defiance. By March of that year, he found a GPS tracker hidden on his SUV, a chilling reminder that someone was watching his every move. But Icepick wasn't fazed. He retaliated by spraying bullets into the home of Matt Pelletier, his former partner in the drug and pimping game, and son of Quebec City's Hells Angels founder, Marc Pelletier. The violence only escalated from there. In November 2023, Michael Dooney-Guerin, the Angels' top enforcer in charge of collecting that 10% street tax, was gunned down while shoveling snow in his own front yard. By the summer, the Crown had indicted Turmel, and he bolted for Europe. Over the next 16 months on the run, he reportedly moved through Portugal and into North Africa, dodging RCMP and Interpol while still calling the shots back home. The pressure mounted after a failed February kidnapping attempt targeting Hells Angels members and their families, and with it came whispers of a price on his head. According to sources inside the Hells Angels, the original $500,000 murder contract was recently raised to $1 million, making Turmel one of the most hunted men in the country.
Wow.
Despite the distance, investigators and underworld insiders alike say Turmel stays in constant communication with his people in Quebec, maintaining control of BFM's operations from thousands of miles away. This is where Dave Turmel rose to the forefront. As the now alleged leader, he became the face of BFM's defiance against the Hells Angels. His move to stop paying the 10% drug tax wasn't just about money, it was a statement. BFM wasn't going to live under biker rule anymore, and the Angels knew this wasn't just another gang member making noise. They didn't want an all-out war with Turmel, not if it could be avoided. So, they tried to broker peace. The Angels sent veteran member Mario Augier, who is currently incarcerated facing his own drugs and gun case, to meet with Turmel, offering what seemed like a golden deal. They promised him control over Charlesbourg and Lévis, his own hometown. For the first time in nearly 25 years, the Hells Angels were willing to give up some of their drug market territory. They even offered to exempt BFM from paying the notorious 10% drug tax, and even went so far as to say they'd forget about the alleged theft of 28 kilos of cocaine, worth around $1.5 million, that BFM had supposedly snatched from them. On paper, it was a historic truce that could have saved lives and cemented Turmel's power without further bloodshed. But when word of the deal reached him in exile, Turmel wasn't having it. His answer was simple: fuck that. He wasn't interested in compromise, he wasn't interested in biker permission slips, and he sure as hell wasn't going to bow to men he saw as old kings of a fading empire. Turmel made it clear he would operate on his own terms. That statement brought heat like never before. Suddenly the gang wasn't just beefing with rivals on the street. They were in a full-scale feud with the Hells Angels, the most entrenched criminal organization in Quebec. The war didn't stay hidden. By 2023, Quebec police were calling it one of the bloodiest conflicts the province had seen in years. Turf wars, shootings, kidnappings, whole neighborhoods were caught in the crossfire. And it wasn't just back alley business anymore. Turmel's people were making bold, out in the open moves. Properties and businesses tied to the Hells Angels were torched, warehouses with Angels tenants went up in flames, even a massage parlor and strip club connected to the bikers were burned to the ground. But what really set the Blood Family Mafia apart wasn't just their refusal to pay the Hells Angels tax, it was the way they enforced their authority. Instead of sticking to traditional street beefs, they weaponized fear. Videos began surfacing online showing victims being tortured, ears cut off, feet burned, even limbs amputated. In one clip obtained by the Journal de Montreal, masked attackers mutilated a man with a knife and blowtorch, forcing him to blame the Hells Angels for his suffering.
Dis-moi que tu vas travailler pour BFM. Ouais, travailler pour BFM. Je te jure, bro.
These weren't random acts of cruelty, they were calculated messages. For BFM, violence wasn't just about collecting debts, it was a brand. And it worked. On the streets of Quebec City, their name spread fast, with people describing them as untouchable. Police and criminologists openly compared their tactics to Mexican cartels, noting how rare it was for a Canadian street gang to embrace brutality on this level.
More striking when you see barbaric stuff like this done. It's very preoccupying because these guys, they use violence, they use fear to control their very lucrative illegal business.
By the end of 2023, BFM had cemented its reputation as one of the most violent and feared criminal organizations in Canada. But less than a year later, by September 2024, the situation had completely spiraled out of control. A wave of BFM-led arsons and shootings in eastern Quebec, combined with the killing of a Hells Angels-connected drug dealer accused of disloyalty, pushed tensions to a breaking point. The final straw came with the gruesome discovery of a 14-year-old BFM affiliate's burnt corpse outside the Red Devils motorcycle clubhouse in Frampton.
Just hours later, police were called to a biker bunker about a kilometer away. It's the clubhouse of the Red Devils motorcycle gang, a group affiliated with the Hells Angels. There, they found what is being described as a dismembered body. The identification of the corpse was done at the police lab in Montreal. The body was so badly mutilated, it was ID'd by dental records. It turned out to be a 14-year-old boy. He was, according to reports, a member of a Montreal street gang, the EGK, Everybody Gets Killed. The teen would have been hired to attack or intimidate the bikers. How he died is still uncertain.
Police believe the boy, linked to St. Leonard's EGK gang, short for Everybody Gets Killed, had set out with another teen armed with AK-47s and arson supplies to strike the Red Devils. Whatever happened inside that clubhouse, it didn't go the way the kids expected. The accomplice fled. Their car was later found torched along Route 112 with 2 melted rifles inside, and the body of the 14-year-old victim was discovered nearby, mangled and burned almost beyond recognition. Authorities think some of the wounds may have even been self-inflicted, possibly caused by a dropped Molotov cocktail. While St. Leonard rapper and known EGK affiliate VT publicly claimed the boy wasn't in a gang and threatened to sue TVA News for defamation, investigators painted a darker picture. Teenagers are being handed military-grade weapons and used as pawns in a gang war. The outrage this sparked was massive, both in the public and within the biker world. On September 29, 2024, Michel Sky Langlois, founding father of the Montreal Hells Angels, convened an emergency meeting at the Mean Tribe Motorcycle Club's clubhouse in Bécancour. Langlois even arrived by plane, flanked by lieutenants and bodyguards. Representatives from Sherbrooke, Quebec, and his South Shore crew were all in attendance. According to the Dirty News crime blog, the meeting brought together some of the most seasoned and still active Hells Angels generals. Men who had lived through the infamous Rock Machine War of the 1990s, which left 162 people dead, some of which were civilians. They knew this had the makings of history repeating itself. But there was a problem. In the past, Canadian prosecutors had used the Hells Angels' internal votes on retaliation as evidence of organized conspiracy, landing patch holders years in prison. The club faced an impossible decision: respond to BFM's attacks and risk another decade-long biker war, or do nothing and watch their reputation crumble. And while the bikers debated their next move, police were quietly closing in on the man who had sparked the conflict, Dave Pic-Turmel.
Canada's most wanted criminal, Dave Pic-Turmel, has been arrested in Italy. Police say Turmel is the alleged leader of the Blood Family Mafia, a street gang that has been involved in brutal drug turf wars throughout the province of Quebec.
How did he get there?
On March 27, 2025, Turmel's run came to an end. The young gang leader had been apprehended in Rome after an ally of Turmel gave up his location to claim the $250,000 bolo reward for any information leading up to the kingpin's arrest. Acting on intelligence provided by the informant, Italian police officers prepared to raid a residential apartment in the Segre Massapica district of Rome. The apartment was suspected of being Turmel's temporary residence while on the lam in Europe. Towards midnight, authorities were knocking on his door. Turmel proceeded to barricade himself in the apartment, but realizing he had nowhere else to go, he turned himself in, presenting a false passport along with ID to the authorities tasked with arresting him. Upon a search of the targeted apartment, authorities had seized multiple SIM cards, 2 cell phones, and even a small quantity of unspecified drugs. Police had also seized a notepad, littered with both French and Arabic writing, presumed to be an address book. Police also found keys to a Mercedes-Benz, pointing out that Turmel was rolling around in luxury months prior to his arrest. He was arrested and brought to the Regina Coeli prison in Rome, where he is currently awaiting extradition back to Canada. Even with the kingpin behind bars, Turmel's fight is far from over. Prison has proven just as dangerous as the streets, and the Blood Family Mafia's reputation for violence has followed him inside. Reports describe BFM members being targeted and tortured behind bars, showing that incarceration doesn't end the cycle of brutality, it just shifts the battlefield. At Orsonville Prison, BFM affiliate and rapper James Celestin, better known as Freakant, was stabbed at least 10 times with a homemade blade in March 2025. A score settled in the gang's internal power plays. Worse, the gang has started turning on its own. One example is Maxime Maheu, a 25-year-old tied to BFM who flipped and cooperated with police. Weeks after being sentenced to 5 years for arson and assault, Maheu was found in his cell so badly beaten that guards couldn't even recognize him. His fingers were broken, his face shattered, and he suffered multiple fractures. 6 inmates were later charged in the assault, one with attempted murder. And as if that weren't enough, BFM's presence inside Quebec jails has escalated into open warfare with staff. On a Monday evening in March, officers reported a drone flying toward the Quebec City Detention Center carrying a large package for the BFM wing, home to around 40 of the gang's members. Inmates smashed their cell windows, sprayed guards with pepper spray, and tried to reel in the drone with a pole, turning the sector into what officers later described as a riot. One correctional officer admitted they've come to expect stabbings whenever they step in to confront the gang. For law enforcement, these incidents prove a harsh truth. Even locked up, BFM hasn't lost its grip on violence. For investigators, the arrest of Dave Turmel closed one chapter, but the story wasn't over. Remember, Turmel had spent more than a year directing BFM from abroad, even as his name was plastered across Canada on wanted posters through the BOLO program. Authorities described him as ruthless, willing to do anything to control the drug trade in eastern Quebec, and they warned that as long as his allies remained free, the violence wouldn't stop. His closest lieutenant, Al Boivin, was next on the radar. Considered Turmel's right-hand man and with him locked away, Boivin is currently ranked as Canada's most wanted fugitive. Boivin grew up in the same Quebec City area, earning a reputation as a reliable enforcer who didn't hesitate to use violence when money or loyalty was on the line. Police say he was deeply embedded in BFM's drug trade and played a key role in the kidnappings, extortion schemes, and intimidation tactics that made the gang notorious. Investigators believe that while Turmel ran things from Portugal and later Italy, Boivin kept operations moving on the ground, making him a crucial piece in BFM's power structure. Even as police launched massive crackdowns, projects like Malsain and Scandaloo, their influence held. Dozens of members were arrested, but the gang itself wasn't destroyed. Police would later admit that as long as leaders like Turmel and Boivin were in play, the Blood family mafia would keep finding ways to operate. For the younger generation of street soldiers, Ice Pick had become a symbol, someone who challenged the decades-long grip of the Hells Angels and proved that a local street gang could stand up to the old order. Whether his fall marks the end of the Blood family mafia's rise, or just the pause before someone else steps up, is a question Quebec's underworld will have to answer. And with Al Boivin still on the run, it's clear this story is far from finished.
Wow, man. I never knew about this. Interesting story.
Sunday morning.
I'm going hard, I need to go again. They call me slipping, fucking once, but I don't slip again. That's why I'm out with my brothers till the fucking end.